Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and I'm not going to make a single joke about whether size matters or it's what you can do with it. It's too easy. And also, I just like this phone too much to make fun of it. There are so few good compact phones out there with high-end specs, or in this case, flagship specs for the most part, that you can use comfortably one-handed, and even putting it in your pocket, and it doesn't sort of jab into your hips every time you sit down, like most phones do. Because with a 5.9-inch screen, which is the same size as last year's ZenFone 8, it is actually a touch smaller than even the Pixel 6a or the Galaxy S22 or the iPhone 13, but it is still comfortably bigger than the 13 mini. So I reckon the ZenFone 9 has that Goldilocks size. It's easy to use one-handed, but also not too small to feel confined or make typing on the keyboard a painful experience. My only slight issue with the design is if you pick it up with your left hand, then your index finger kind of naturally sits on the lower camera lens because the phone is so small, which is not ideal. I have to keep rubbing it on my shirt to clean it. Now, interestingly, this is the same price as the iPhone 13 mini, starting at $700 or 800 euros. I'll put UK pricing in the description, and I would argue you're getting quite a lot more for your money with this, although to be fair, the iPhone 14s are just around the corner in September. So what do you get for your $699? Well, the ZenFone 9 packs in the top-end Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, that's the brand new mid-year refresh. We also get 8 or 16 gigs of RAM and 128 or 256 gigs of storage. We also get a 120Hz screen, and it's protected by the latest Gorilla Glass Victus. There's a dual camera setup on the back that also gives us a very fancy gimbal stabilizer built in. There's a headphone jack, incredible stereo speakers with lossless Snapdragon sound support, IP68 water resistance, Wi-Fi 6E, we get solid battery life, and I really like the software. Zen UI doesn't feel too far from stock Android, but it also adds a few nice extras. So for $700, I think this packs in quite a lot for the money, but we are also missing a few features. There's no telephoto lens, which is a bit disappointing. There's no wireless charging. There's no micro SD card support, although that's pretty rare these days. Also, the camera sensors themselves, while an upgrade over last year, they are still kind of upper mid-range. It also doesn't use the more advanced LTPO displays, which gives you adaptive refresh, although this can still dynamically switch between refresh rates. But I think my biggest bugbear with this is that ASUS only promised 2 years of Android updates. Samsung promised 4 years, so that is a little bit disappointing for long-term use. So there are compromises, but effectively we're still talking about a near flagship level phone that's only $700 and is actually comfortable to use with just one hand. Design-wise, there's a matte aluminium frame around the edges, and also we get this new textured surface on the back. It is a polymer, so plastic, but I like it, and the texture makes it incredibly grippy. I'm actually quite happy using this without a case, which is a rare feeling. And even though it's an identical size and weight from the ZenFone 8, it is quite a departure in terms of style. We have sort of right-angled edges now. They're trying to be as efficient with the space as possible, and you can't have that as much if you've got curved edges. And so while they're equally small, I think this is a nice little step up in terms of look and feel. Although I would probably choose one of the other colors. This midnight black is a bit dull. I'd probably go with moonlight white or sunset red. But I have to say, as much as I do like a compact phone, I think this looks good, part of me kind of misses these old, more fun ZenFone designs. Who doesn't miss this? Now, if you're thinking, Tom, I love the size of that, but it's still just too tall. I can't quite reach the top. Well, never fear, because there is also a dedicated one-handed mode, so you can actually swipe down at the bottom, and then it brings the whole screen down, making it easier to tap something that was at the top. Also, the power button not only acts as a fingerprint reader, but also a smart key swipe gesture. So you can actually bring down the notification panel, you can refresh a page, play or pause, all with your thumb by swiping up or down. But wait, there's more, because round the back where your index finger rests, well, assuming you're holding with your right hand, we also have back double tap, which is, well, fairly self-explanatory, but you can take a screenshot, open the camera, turn the torch on and off just by double tapping the back. Although I did find this a little bit more hit or miss because you're never exactly sure where to tap. Now, one of the headlines of the ZenFone 9, aside from the compact size and the relatively affordable price, and also that gimbal stabilizer, which we'll come back to in a second, is the fact that we get that Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Right now, there are only a handful of phones that offer that brand new Qualcomm chip, which they say should boost CPU and GPU performance by 10% each, and also it's about 20% more power efficient, which makes it a decent step up even over the already powerful 8 Gen 1. And also, this is the first time I've tested a phone with this new chip that also doesn't have an active fan that can almost flawlessly play Genshin Impact. Occasionally it'll drop to 59, but it's pretty much a smooth 60 most of the time. Although with longer gaming sessions, it can start to slow down a little bit. We also get some of those tasty ROG features coming over to ZenFone, like the Game Genie, which lets you switch performance modes, change a bunch of settings, turn off background stuff, speed up your phone. Now the only downside, despite some beefed up cooling this year with a new vapor chamber cooler, the ZenFone 9 does still throttle. You can see over this 20-minute 3D Mark stress test, the performance drops quite considerably. It's got quite a low stability score, especially next to its bigger brother, the ROG Phone 6, and that's even without its cooling fan. But still, while it may not be a dedicated gaming phone, the ZenFone with its new chip and up to 16 gigs of RAM, which I have in here, is an absolute beast in terms of performance. And combined with the 120Hz screen with 240Hz touch sampling and a nice and fast UI, which also conveniently gives you the option to speed up animations within the display menu, normally you have to dig down into the developer options for this, it's incredibly fast. And it's a lovely screen as well. AMOLED, 800 nits of brightness, up to 1100 peak HDR, which is close to the top end for most phones. It's color accurate, we get a nice symmetrical bezel. The hole punch is definitely on the larger size given the relatively smaller screen, but I do quite like it's in the corner rather than central. We also get stereo speakers which sound fantastic. There's a surprising amount of bass, and actually you can feel it just holding the phone at higher volumes, which maybe is a little bit off-putting, but they're some of the best speakers I've ever heard on a phone. Now, small phone means small battery, right? Well, actually, it's not too bad, and it's a nice little step up from even last year's ZenFone 8. This had a 4,000 mAh cell, now we're up to 4,300, which is a touch smaller than the 4410 on the Pixel 6a, although that is a bigger phone as well, and it's significantly bigger than the 3,700 mAh cell you get in the S22. So for a sub 6-inch size, that battery is actually quite impressive. And while I have only had a few days to test this, so far I am impressed with the upgrade. Whereas last year with the 8, I was finishing the day with about 10 or 12% of my battery left, now it's between 20 and 25. So battery life has gone from not great to actually decent. It is a shame we don't get any wireless charging, but we do get reasonably fast 30-watt hypercharging, which does come bundled in the box. I don't know how I've ended up with so many phones on this desk. I'm talking about the ZenFone 9. Okay, let's move on and talk about this camera. That's one of the big questions I had about this. How does it stack up, given that generally ASUS phones aren't always known for the best cameras? And I think even though we can describe this as a flagship in terms of the Snapdragon chip and also some of the other specs, the camera setup is maybe one of the areas where it falls down a little bit. So it's a dual lens setup with the main 50 megapixel camera getting a nice bump up from the Sony IMX686 sensor last year to the newer IMX766. So much bigger sensor and also much bigger pixel size. But to put it in context, it is the same sensor used by the OnePlus Nord 2T, the ROG Phone 6, the Nothing Phone 1. It's kind of upper mid-range, not flagship. And that's paired with a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, which also doubles as a macro lens. But sadly, there is no telephoto here. So I took the ZenFone 9 and the iPhone 13 mini, both $700 phones, for a spot of lunch with my brother's family and also around my local town to get an idea of how they compared. And most of the time I would say the iPhone comes out on top. The ZenFone has a tendency to over-sharpen, lean a little heavy on the contrast, and also in brighter conditions it doesn't quite deliver the same level of dynamic range. To be fair, it's not far behind and it can do a decent job, but just don't expect proper flagship level quality out of it. However, the ZenFone 9 does have a little ace up its sleeve in the form of a 6-axis hybrid gimbal stabilizer, and that is in addition to both OIS, and EIS. Now the gimbal is only built into the main lens on the back, not the ultra-wide or the selfie, but it works in all modes, so photos, videos, pro mode, 30 or 60 FPS video, they all benefit from the gimbal. As well as that, for video specifically, we have 3 EIS options: off, normal, and hypersteady. This crops in, so you're limited to 1080p 30, but you get the absolute smoothest video. For me though, I usually stick with the regular 4K 30 video for the best balance of quality and smoothness. As far as I know though, only Vivo have experimented putting a gimbal into their phone, so it's a pretty rare feature, and it does certainly bring the ZenFone 9's video capabilities and also to some extent the photos closer to that kind of more best-in-class iPhone experience. I've just realized I had this box there the whole time. ZenFone 6, ZenFone 9. Never even thought about that. I'm not recording the whole video again. That's gonna be an Easter egg now, and I'm gonna pretend that I meant to do it on purpose. Okay, let's wrap up. Should you buy the new ZenFone 9? Well, yeah, I think it's worth considering. It's a big step up over last year's ZenFone 8. I think firstly in terms of design, although I know it's more subjective, but it's a better camera, it's a longer battery life, it's much more powerful, and it is in the exact same compact size. So nice little upgrade there. And I also think for the $700 price tag, it's not bad value for money, although I would stick with that base model. I don't think it's really worth paying extra for 16 gigs of RAM. It is missing a few features though, and I do think it's still let down a bit by the camera. It's very 7 out of 10, but taken as a whole, I've still come away impressed by the ZenFone 9. And if you are after a fast, compact phone with a good screen, great speakers, and a headphone jack, definitely consider this, and I'll leave a link below if you want to check it out. But what do you reckon? Are you tempted by the new ZenFone? And also, do you wish we had more high-end sort of flagship phones in this size? Let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy the video, a cheeky little like and subscribe would be very much appreciated, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.